Okay, well, we're here down in the basement because it's hot outside, and I wanted to run through a kind of how-to step of sizing your fuel system on your hot rod. So what I've noticed is that fuel system planning is pretty important and challenging to most people because there's a lot of parts for your hot rod fuel system, number one. Number two, a lot of the stuff from your OE system doesn't work, either because your car is carbureted or it was designed as a low horsepower system and you're making double, triple, quadruple, or more amount of the horsepower. And number three, there's so many options. Selecting the best one can get really, really confusing. And I view there's a couple ways to design your fuel system. You can guess. The problem with guessing is that if you mess up, you can lean the engine out and blow up. Number two, you can pay somebody or have a friend to tell you what size pump, injectors, hoses you need for your car. The only problem is you have to tell them what you want. They have to understand, kind of read between the lines, and select parts that are the best for you based on potentially some of their biases. You can ask your cat to help. Your cat's probably not going to help. Or you could be like the people that say, buy once, cry once. I don't like listening to those people because, in my opinion, at least, that is throwing money at a problem that you don't understand. There is difference between you get what you pay for, which is buying something that's quality and what you need, versus buy once, cry once, which to me is people that just want to throw money at a problem because they don't want to take the time, but half an hour to actually understand what their system needs. So what I have here is kind of a step one for what I'm calling fuel injector and fuel system sizing 101 for your hot rod. So kind of what I'm looking at here is I'm going to start with a goal. And how to start with the goal is say what your car looks like. So what I do, in this case, I'm going to work of, I have a G-body, basically the goal of running mid-high 10s, full weight, 3,500 pounds. I like my leather seats, heated power seats, AC. The damn cat does too. Anyways, so I want to run, mid-10s, high 10s, 127 mile an hour, roughly. So using the Wallace Racing Calculator, I need about 560 flywheel horsepower. So then what I'm going to also do is go over to your fuel injector sizing calculator and say, okay, I'm going to go 575. There's a bit of loss. 8 injectors, that's a supercharged engine. I'm running E85, about 85% duty cycle max. This is the Deutschwerks website, but you can get this through many different of your typical online places. And roughly I need about a 59 or 60 pound injector. So now that I know, okay, how fast I want to go, how heavy the car is, that's how much fuel injector I need per cylinder to achieve that. And then I've got this Excel kind of calculator down here. So with 8 injectors, 80 pound per hour, I need 640 pounds per hour of fuel flow. E85 density is 6.5 pounds per gallon. So I need about 98 gallons per hour of fuel flow, or roughly about, 380 liters per hour. So what I'm going to say, 380, I can grab a Walbro 450. That's going to do what I need, right? The problem is these fuel pump charts kind of lie to you. So the only way they flow 450 liters per hour is this line here, which is about 115, 118 gallons per hour. And the only way it achieves that is at 30 PSI and 13.5 volts at the pump. I can almost guarantee you, unless you have a carbureted car that's normally aspirated, you are never going to have only 30 psi fuel pressure. And kind of to prove why these charts, you can't just, a lot of people will ask, hey, I'm going this fast, how big of a pump can I have? And a lot of people give answers, but you can't give a fuel pump size answer based on just how fast the car is going, because there's all these different things that are affecting it. Voltage, resistance of your fuel lines, base pressure, how much boost you're making. Especially if you're running one of these in-tank Walbro style pumps. Now, if you're going with a gear external, a brushless newer pump, if you're making over 1,000 horsepower, the flow is a lot more flat as your pressure goes up. But as I'm more in the 9-second or slower street car range, I'm going to be sticking to these types of charts. So for a quick rundown, my 3,500 pound car that I want to run mid-high tens, I need 560 flywheel horsepower. That told me I need 59 pound per hour injectors at 85% duty cycle. So I went up to 80 pounds because that's kind of close. It doesn't give me room for growth. 60s and 80s are essentially the same price. So I went 80s, and 80s drive fine. So I went up to 80. I calculated that's why I need this 98.5 gallons per hour, which is this blue line. Now, the graph says, like I said, that this pump is big enough, even with my 42 pounds of base fuel pressure, this green line here, my little red dot there, I'm underneath the curve. So basically, if you're underneath the curve here, you're always good. That pump's going to be able to supply what you need. But your fuel lines and filter have resistance and pressure drop in them. Well, how much is that? Once I get to step 2 here, we're just talking about number 1 today. We'll go to 2 and discuss how to calculate to get from this green line to this orange line. This green line, you're going to select, likely it's going to be 42. It might be 58 if you have excessive fuel demand. Or if you're really pushing, let's say you have 80 pound injectors, but you need 87 pound injectors. You can bump your fuel base pressure up. You're going to lose flow, but you can trade off. So what I'm going to say here is that, kind of as an estimate for this example, like I say, I'll go into detail in step 2, which will be another video. I'm just going to say I've got 6 psi fuel pressure drop. So my 42 base now turns into 58. So you slide that line over. Now I've got 10 psi of boost on a proportional rising regulator. So what was 42 psi at the rail is actually 6 psi additional at the pump, because these charts are rated at the pump, not at the fuel rail. You want 42 psi at the fuel rail at all times for your base plus your boost, but the pump has to fight the fuel lines and filter. So take your base pressure plus your resistance of your line pressure and your boost pressure rise. Now you're at 58. But then, scrolling down a little bit more here, you're wiring on that car. You've got an old G-body, Grand National, that has tiny wiring possibly. Maybe you've got like a 4th gen Camaro. They had like 150 or something liter per hour pumps. So you get this big pump in there, that big 450. Yeah, you have 14 volts to battery, but you got 2 volts of drop. You got 15 foot of wiring, and that fuel hat just can't supply the current to the fuel pump that you want. So, what was at this red line, you were thinking you're okay because you're selecting you only need 98 gallons per hour. This pump is able to flow like 108. So you have 10% additional safety factor from what your pump's available to. But by the time you have your resistance of your lines, your boost pressure, and your voltage drop, because you didn't size your current demand and your wire gauge, now that pump is only capable of flowing just over 80 gallons per hour, which is like 20% less than what you need. So you can order your 450 thinking, I have almost 100 liters per hour additional flow. But by the time you get into a real world situation, you're like 20% less than what you need to have. So these 450s that seem like Superman from this line really lose their effect. And this isn't a very basic application. If you're running 20 pounds of boost or high base pressures, that pump's having to flow 80, 90 PSI. And you're way down here, you're in this 60 gallons per hour range. That's when people start stacking and stacking and stacking pumps where you'll have like 3 450s in a tank because your fuel injectors are huge, which is fine, but you didn't calculate your pump and hose size and your wire gauge is too small. And like I say, you can be the buy once, cry once crowd and throw 3/4 inch hose in with a brushless pump or something. But if you're in a case here where a lot of people are, where you just want to be, mid 500 to 700 horsepower, which isn't a little bit, it is a lot. But if you want to be in this, very achievable range, that's still kind of a fun, daily drivable cruiser weekend vehicle, you can live with these 450, 525 single pumps, and with like 6 or -8 feed lines, 3/8 half inch, you really don't need a lot of the times a 3/4 hose with a brushless pump at this power level, but it's really easy to mess up unless you understand these charts. So, like I say, this is step one. So moving on from here, I'm going to be basing all my calculations around this about 100 gallon per hour fuel demand. From there, I'm going to say, okay, step 2, we're going to pressure, demand, look at your pump and hoses. This 450 might be okay for me. It might not be. I might have to go to a 525. I might need -6, -8, -10 hoses. We'll take a look at it. And then we're going to look at the wire gauge. Do we need number 10 gauge, number 14, something like that. So that's it for step 1. We'll look at step 2 in the next video. Thanks for catching out. Check you later.